Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Jimmy Ratliff and this is Alesa Loftus, and we're with Dynamic Independence. Today we're going to continue our ADA series and we're going to discuss accessible restroom requirements. Alesa, can you tell us about some of these requirements?
Of course. The Americans with Disabilities Act outlines standards for accessible design in the ADA standards for accessible design in the ADA standards for accessible design ADAAG. These standards include specific measurements to ensure that restrooms are usable by individuals with disabilities. Let's discuss some key features and measurements.
All right, that sounds like a great place to start. So, can you talk about maybe accessible restroom stalls and what those requirements are?
Certainly. A wheelchair accessible stall must be a minimum of 60 inches wide and 56 inches deep for wall hung toilets,
Okay.
and then 59 inches deep for floor mounted toilets. Those measurements are taken from the compartment sidewall to the rear wall.
Okay, so the rear wall would be the wall that's behind the toilet itself.
Right.
Okay. So, what about doors on these stalls then? Are there specific requirements or measurements for those?
Stall doors should be at least 32 inches wide when the door is open,
Okay.
and then to 90 degrees. Remember, if the door swings into the stall, there must be a minimum of 56 or 59 inches of clearance from the edge of the open door to the rear wall of the stall, depending on whether the toilet is floor mounted or wall hung. Door locks and handles should be between 34 and 48 inches above the floor and should be able to be operable with one hand without tight grasping, pinching, or twisting of the wrist.
And I think that's probably something that's very similar with even like some of the sinks and those types of things that we'll talk about a little bit later, where you want to have the least amount of movement in the hands that's required so that it's accessible for anybody.
Right, exactly, because there are some disabilities that cause individuals to not have full use of their hands. So a knob that you'd have to grab hold of and really twist is not going to be good. So better to have the ones that have like the long elongated kind of a paddle looking
Mm-hmm.
to where they can just push that. It'll be more accessible usage out of those than the ones they have to grab onto.
Okay, perfect. So, speaking about things that you might have to grab onto while you're in an accessible restroom. Let's talk about the grab bars or these rails that you see kind of around toilets, sinks, things like that. So they're essential for safety and accessibility, and it's my understanding that they should be uh, mounted horizontally and that they should be between 36 and 33 inches off of the ground from the floor. Is that always the case?
Generally, yes. However, if an accessible stall is designed specifically for children, say at a school, those grab bars would need to be installed lower, generally between 18 and 27 inches above the floor. Depending on the location of the bars, the length requirements may change as well.
So the length maybe behind the toilet might be a different, even though they're installed at the same heights, might be a different length than the one, say, that's at the side.
Right, right.
Okay. So does the ADA have standards for accessible sinks?
Okay, it does. The faucets are hand operated metering faucets. That is, they either automatically turn on or once activated by pressing down, the water must remain running for a minimum of 10 seconds. Generally, sinks should be wall hung and leave clearance for the wheelchair accessibility. They should be no higher than 34 inches above the floor. In other words, older type sinks and stuff, it used to be there'd be like a counter or something,
Yeah.
and a wheelchair couldn't wheel up close enough to get their hands under the water or even turn it on or anything. So now they're built more like the tower type, pillar type is what I mean, that have nothing underneath them,
Right.
and so that somebody can wheel in under them and still get up close enough to the sink to wash their hands.
So if you had somebody in a wheelchair, they could get under there. There's things like toe clearance and things that they have to worry
Right,
about there as
right,
well.
right, right.
So the design that you have with these types of sinks are much more accessible than the old counter style
Yes.
sinks.
Yes. Very. Very.
And for the water, uh, the 10-second minimum, I know some of the older sinks would have, you would push down maybe on the faucet, or there would be a knob on the faucet you could push down on, and then there would be like a spring time in there that would let the water run for so long before it went off.
Right.
And nowadays we're seeing more of those types of faucets that have kind of the put your hand under and it senses kind of a digital interface with the sink there.
Yeah.
And that also suffices for that
Yeah.
requirement.
They've even done that with the hand dryers, also, so that you just put your hands under and it'll blow the air. So that that's also more accessible. to
Excellent,
individuals'
excellent.
facilities.
So we've covered several things today, and I think that it's been incredibly helpful. Um, and I think we need to remind everybody that while this is um, just an overview of some of the key requirements for accessible restrooms, there are other specific measurements for things, and there's some things that you might not even think of, and that might be like soap dispenser locations and heights, or even heights and locations and specific designs for signage for restrooms, things like raised lettering, braille, different aspects to that that would be uh, that you might not think about if you maybe do not have a disability. And one of these great things about this is that implementing these types of designs makes this area more safe and more inclusive for everyone. It makes it more accessible for everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's very important. We want to make sure that everybody has access. And I just want to say on doors, because it touched on the bathroom stall door. If it opens in, there needs to be the clearance, because if a person in a wheelchair wheels in, and that door has it's swung open. So then the person comes in, and if there's not a clearance, if they can't get far enough past that door for that door to shut behind them, then it doesn't do any good
Right.
to have it. And also, you could have a bathroom stall that is accessible with the proper measurements, but if you don't have the door that goes into the bathroom that is a proper width, which we'll address in one of our other lives, then they wouldn't even be able to get into the bathroom
Right.
to get to the stall to get in there. So it's important, access to the building, and then access to the bathroom, then access to the stalls, and having the proper space and stuff. That all adds together to make a business of any kind more inclusive and accessible to individuals with disabilities, as well as others that don't have disabilities.
Correct. A lot of the ADA requirements that you see, especially for existing architecture, things that have been there, a lot of that is barrier removal. And it is making sometimes small adjustments that make things more accessible.
Right.
And it doesn't always have to be a major overhaul of things. A lot of it is just looking at what you currently have and making small changes, like making sure that there's enough clearance for the doors, making sure that things are at a reachable level. These types of things that really do help with that accessibility option. Another thing that I remember reading about in the ADA design standards was on the stall doors. There are doors that automatically close. They're either spring assist, or there's a mechanism in there that helps to close that. And as part of some of the ADA requirements. And that also helps if an individual has difficulty with mobility and they may not be able to maybe reach out and grab the door to close it, or they may have be in a wheelchair or some other mobility device, and they might not be able to reach out as far because of the equipment that they're using. They may not be able to navigate really well around there. So that's another thing that people can look at, businesses can
Yes,
look at.
absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much more that we're going to cover in the continuation of the ADA series that's going to address. We're going to try to get everything, but there are so many little parts that move together that can make a community more welcoming
Yes.
to all
Mhm.
people of all disabilities. or abilities. So, it's really important, and I've learned a lot just while we've been going over this. So, I'm just excited to be sharing with all of our viewers.
And we appreciate y'all tuning in every week. We're really trying to get this information out there. Of course, here at Dynamic Independence, our primary goal is to help people with disabilities live more independently, and breaking down these barriers is one of the key ways that individuals are able to do that. So, if you want to learn more, then you can also visit the ADA Standards for Accessible Design website. That's ada.gov/law and regs/design standards. That is the link to that is also down in the description. And if you want to, you can even contact us here at Dynamic Independence. Our number is 918-335-1314, or you can visit us in person at 1110 Southeast Frankfield Boulevard, right here in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And we would be happy to work with you and answer any questions that you might have on the ADA, and do any kind of research that we need to make sure that you have the most current information, especially if you're a business owner looking to make some of these updates or modifications that will help your business be more accessible to your clients. Alesa, thanks for all the great information today.
Thanks, Jimmie.
Before we sign off, remind everybody about the Puppeteer Club that we're working on.
Okay, so we kicked off our Puppeteer Club this past Friday, and it was awesome. And we still have room for more students to come and join with us. So it is from noon to 1 on Fridays. So the next one will be day after tomorrow, June 14th, from noon to 1. So just, you don't have to call me ahead of time. You don't have to, do anything special. Just show up. And if a parent would like to stay and join in with us and just listen, they're welcome to do that. Or you can just drop your child off and come back and pick them up at 1. Either way works out for them, whatever feels comfortable for you. And we just look forward to a really great next 6-7 weeks, and getting this puppet skits, done. And we would like to do a show, but yeah. So I hope to see more students. I know I have a few that decided to join this past Friday, and I'm hoping to maybe even see some more coming this Friday.
Excellent. Yeah, you have some really great kids that are you're working with right now with that, and they seem very engaged.
Yeah.
Could hear a lot of different characters and voices coming out of the room.
Yeah, we had
last
fun.
Friday, so
We
that's
did.
excellent.
It's
Excellent.
really a fun time, and that is the number one purpose of this club, is to have fun. But at the same time, we are learning how to make friends with people who have differing abilities from us. We're learning how to include others who are different from us, and we're learning about different disabilities.
So it's a well-rounded program that lets you have some fun while being educated at the same time.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's it for today. So we'll see you again next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time for our ADA Standards and Accessible Design web series that we're doing right now. Be sure that you leave any questions or in the comment section, and we'll address them on our next live. So until then, everyone, have a great week. Thank you.